The story begins in a car factory in the 1950s, where a line of Plymouth Fury cars is being completed. Among them, one stands out, a red model. While a worker is checking the engine, the hood suddenly slams shut on its own and crushes his hand. Shortly after, another employee gets inside the car to inspect it and accidentally drops the ashes from his cigarette onto the seat. Hours later, the workday ends and everyone leaves, but the supervisor notices that the red Plymouth still has its headlights on. When he walks over to check it, he finds the lifeless body of the employee who had been smoking inside. Decades later, in 1978, a student named Dennis arrives in his car to pick up his friend Arie, a nerdy and rather clumsy guy. Despite being very different, the two are close friends, and they head to school together. There, they stop by their lockers and meet Lee, a new student who quickly catches everyone's attention because of her beauty. Later, Dennis waits for Arie to have lunch, but he discovers that his friend is being bullied by Buddy, the school's tough guy. Dennis rushes into the workshop just as Buddy grabs Arnie's lunch and threatens him with a knife. He tries to intervene, but the bully throws the food on the floor, causing Arie to slip. When he falls, the boy loses his glasses, and Buddy crushes them under his foot while mocking him. Dennis takes advantage of the distraction, knocks the knife out of Buddy's hand with a quick hit, and punches him in the face. Buddy's friends jump Dennis, but a teacher arrives and stops the fight. When the situation is checked, he forces Buddy to empty his pockets and finds the knife hidden there. As a result, the bully is expelled from school, and his friends receive punishment. At the end of the day, Dennis and Arie talk about what happened while heading home. On the way, Arie spots a car parked in front of a house and asks Dennis to stop. There they find a red Plymouth Fury, the same model from the incident at the factory, although now it is old and badly worn. Arie doesn't care about its condition and immediately becomes obsessed with the car. At that moment, the owner appears, an old man named George. He tells them the car's name is Christine and that it belonged to his brother, who passed away a few weeks earlier. That's why he wants to sell it quickly, offering it for $250. Dennis advises his friend not to buy such a wrecked car, but Arie accepts the offer without hesitation. That night, Arie arrives home and tells his parents about the purchase, but his strict mother strongly opposes it and demands that he get rid of the car. Arie refuses, saying he bought it with his own savings. Even so, his mother stands firm, which causes the young man to leave the house and take the car to a workshop with Dennis. There they meet the owner of the place, a grumpy old man named Will, who treats them quite rudely. Even so, he allows them to leave the car there for the night before sending them home. On the way back, Dennis asks Arie why he bought such a wrecked car. Arie replies that he finally found something as ugly as himself, but that it can become something better if it really tries. Over the next few weeks, Arie works day and night repairing the car. Even though the shop owner remains rude, he decides to hire him to help with the work. In return, Arie is allowed to use any scrap parts he needs to fix Christine. Without realizing it, the young man begins to grow more and more attached to the car. The next day, Dennis is talking with some friends about the new student, and they dare him to go talk to her in the library. Dennis accepts the challenge and approaches Lee to ask her out, but the girl tells him she already has a date, so Dennis walks away embarrassed. Later, at the end of the day, he decides to stop by Arnie's house since they haven't seen much of each other lately. When he arrives, he is surprised to find his friend very different. He no longer wears glasses, he's dressed in more stylish clothes, and he has a much more rebellious attitude. He barely wants to talk to Dennis and quickly leaves to do extra work at the workshop. His mother tries to stop him, but Arie ignores her and drives away. After that, the woman talks to Dennis and confesses that she's worried about her son and about that car, because she discovered that the former owner took his own life inside the vehicle by inhaling carbon monoxide. After hearing this, Dennis decides to speak with George. The old man tells him that when his brother bought Christine, he became completely obsessed with the car, even after his wife and daughter died in it. And to make things worse, after his brother's death, the car mysteriously appeared in front of his house weeks later. This leaves Dennis even more unsettled, so that same night he goes to the garage to take a closer look at the car. When he tries to open the door, the radio suddenly turns on by itself. Frightened, he runs away before anyone can see him. The next morning, there's a football game at school. Dennis gets ready to play when, in the distance, he sees Arie arriving with Christine, now completely restored. The car catches everyone's attention, including Buddy and his friends. To Dennis's surprise, Lee steps out of the car and kisses Arie in front of everyone. Confused and upset, Dennis loses focus during the game, and an opposing player takes advantage of the moment to hit him so hard that he's knocked unconscious and seriously injured. Days later, Dennis wakes up in the hospital with his leg in a cast and his neck fractured. Arie is there beside him, visiting. Dennis tells him that because of the injury, he will never be able to play football again, and that he was close to being paralyzed. He also asks how Arie managed to fix Christine so quickly, but Arie simply replies that he worked very hard. The conversation shifts when Arie explains that he forced his parents to register the car in his name, or he would drop out of school. Dennis notices that his friend has changed a lot, as if something dark is growing inside him. Even so, Arie says goodbye and leaves. That night, Arie takes Lee to a drive-in theater. At first, everything seems romantic, but when things begin to get more intimate, Lee stops and gets out of the car. Arie follows her, and she tells him she doesn't want to share that moment inside the car. She also complains that he's obsessed with Christine and pays more attention to the car than to his own girlfriend. Arie thinks that's ridiculous, but he convinces her to get back inside because it starts to rain. Lee agrees, but as soon as they get in, the windshield starts malfunctioning and Arie steps out to check it. Meanwhile, Lee eats a snack inside the car. Suddenly, the radio turns on by itself, and a bright light comes from the dashboard. The girl suddenly starts to feel sick, as if she's choking. She can't breathe, and Arie rushes to help her, but the car acts on its own again and locks the doors from the inside. Desperate, Arie tries to open the door, but he can't. Fortunately, Lee, barely able to breathe, manages to unlock it. A driver parked nearby sees what's happening and opens the door. Furious, Arie attacks the man, but the guy was only trying to help. Finally, he manages to remove the piece of food stuck in Lee's throat, saving her life. After what happened, Arie drives Lee home, but the girl quickly gets out of the car and doesn't want to talk. He tries to apologize, but Lee insists that, somehow, the car caused everything. She even says that Christine seems jealous of her, because something strange always happens when they're together. Arie believes it's just paranoia and promises they'll talk about it the next day. Then he goes back to the car, but he can't get it to start. Almost by instinct, he begins talking to Christine, telling her that what happened with Lee won't change anything, and that she will always be his car. He tries to start it again, and this time it works. Later they return to the garage and Arie leaves the car there. But not long after, Buddy and his friends sneak into the place. Once Arie leaves, the bullies begin smashing Christine with sledgehammers. They don't just damage the body of the car, they also rip the seats apart and destroy the radio. The next day, Arie and Lee reconcile and go together to the garage because Arie forgot his wallet in the car. But when they arrive, Arie is left in shock when he sees Christine completely destroyed. Lee asks who could have done something like that and tries to comfort him, but Arie loses control and forces her to leave. Later, during dinner, he tells his parents what happened. They try to comfort him by saying they will help him buy another car, but that only makes him even angrier. Arie knows they never liked Christine, just like Lee didn't, and he blames them for what happened. He says that if they had allowed him to keep the car in the garage, none of this would have happened. After saying several hurtful things, he gets up from the table and storms off to his room. His father follows him and demands that he apologize to his mother, but Arie responds with the same rebellious attitude. The argument becomes so intense that his father tries to stop him by force, and Arie almost ends up seriously hurting him. Hours later, the young man returns to the garage, obsessed with fixing Christine piece by piece. But then something incredible happens. The car begins repairing itself. The engine starts putting itself back together, and little by little the entire vehicle restores itself without Arie having to do anything. That same night, one of Buddy's friends, Moochie, is driving his truck along the road. Suddenly, he hears the engine of a car approaching. It's Christine, which appears on the road and stops in front of him. Frightened, the boy thinks Arie is inside and tries to justify what they did. But the car turns on its headlights and speeds straight toward him. Moochie runs and barely manages to dodge the hit, thinking the car is gone, but Christine suddenly appears again and starts chasing him. The young man runs in desperation until he reaches an old warehouse. He runs down a narrow corridor, but the car follows him slowly, almost as if it's playing with him. Eventually, he ends up trapped in a dead end. With nowhere left to go, he pulls out his knife and threatens the driver, but Christine begins moving forward. Even though the space is far too narrow, the car forces its way through, and crushes him. The next morning, Arie visits Dennis in the hospital and tells him what happened to Moochie. Dennis finds everything very suspicious, especially because Christine mysteriously appeared fully repaired after having been destroyed. But Arie doesn't seem concerned and leaves. Just then, Detective Yonkins appears and tells Arie that he is investigating both the destruction of the car and Moochie's death, whose body was found split in half. Arie says he knows nothing about the young man's death, although he admits the news doesn't bother him. Detective Yonkins begins to suspect him and reveals that he already spoke with Lee, who told him how strange it was to see the car completely restored. This makes Arie lose his patience, and he walks away without saying another word. Later he calls Lee to try to see her, but the girl refuses, which only increases his anger. Meanwhile, Buddy and his friend Don stop at a store to buy some drinks, and then head back onto the road. While driving, a car with its headlights on begins following them. Buddy stops to see who it is, but the lights prevent him from seeing clearly. He tries to get away by backing up, but the other vehicle does the same. Then it reveals itself. It's Christine. Annoyed, Buddy speeds off until he reaches a gas station where his friend Rich works. He steps out of the car holding an iron bar, ready to confront whoever is chasing him. Suddenly, Christine appears at full speed and slams into his car, completely crushing one side of it. Buddy thinks Arie is inside and challenges him to come out, but Christine accelerates again and pushes the car straight into the repair shop. Inside was Don, who crashes into the wall along with the vehicle. As if that weren't enough, the damaged car begins leaking gasoline, and the fuel spreads across the floor until it reaches Rich's feet. Buddy's car catches fire, and when the flames reach the gasoline, the entire garage explodes, taking Rich with it. Buddy manages to escape and runs down the road to save his life. But Christine emerges from the garage wrapped in flames and begins chasing him. In the darkness of the night, the monstrous car finally catches up to him and runs him over, leaving his body lying on the road as it burns. Sometime later, Old Will, the owner of the garage, hears a car approaching. When he opens the doors, he sees Christine covered in smoke. It seems strange to him because Arie had left with the car earlier to do a job. He grabs a shotgun and approaches carefully. He tries to open the door, but the body of the car is so hot that he has to use a rag to do it. When he looks inside, he discovers that no one is there. Even so, he decides to get into the car to check it, and Christine takes advantage of the moment. The doors suddenly slam shut, and the seat moves forward, crushing the old man against the dashboard. The next day, Arie returns to the garage and finds several police cars outside. Inside is Detective Yonkins, who informs him that they found his boss dead inside the car. What's even stranger is that everything suggests it was suicide, since his gun was found with him. Arie says he has no idea what happened, although he suspects it was Christine's doing, especially since the car once again appears completely restored. Meanwhile, Dennis returns home and receives a call from Lee, who asks to speak with him. When he arrives, she tells him that she believes the car is somehow controlling Arie and making him more violent. Dennis doesn't want to believe that his friend could do something like that, but if the car really is influencing him, then it must be destroyed. After their conversation, Lee leaves. But seconds later, Arie shows up with Christine and asks Dennis to go for a ride with him. During the drive, Arie behaves very strangely. He drinks too much, drives at high speed, and even lets go of the steering wheel so the car can drive itself. This deeply worries Dennis, who can't stop thinking about what Lee said, and he begins to believe that maybe Arie no longer has control over Christine. However, instead of listening to his friend, Arie tells Dennis in a threatening tone that nothing and no one will ever come between him and Christine. To prove it, he pushes the car to full speed and suddenly swerves into the opposite lane, nearly crashing into an oncoming vehicle. Dennis realizes that his friend is on the verge of madness. The next day, Dennis leaves a note at the garage asking Arie to meet him there that night. When the time comes, Dennis and Lee wait for him at the place, but Arie never shows up. So they decide to move forward with their plan. They climb into a nearby bulldozer and drive it into the garage. The plan is simple. Lee will stay in the office and close the door when Arie arrives. As soon as he leaves, Dennis will destroy Christine with the bulldozer. But what they don't know is that Christine is already hiding inside the garage, buried beneath a pile of debris. Suddenly, the car's headlights turn on. It speeds straight toward Lee. The girl reacts on instinct, grabbing onto a hanging tire and barely managing to avoid the hit. But Christine doesn't stop and prepares to attack her again. Just then, Dennis positions the bulldozer's claw in front of her and blocks the impact. The car backs up and moves to the other side of the garage while Dennis maneuvers the bulldozer to face it. At that moment, it becomes clear that Christine is not alone. Arie is inside, completely dominated by the car's influence. Suddenly, the headlights flare on, and within seconds the car repairs itself completely once again. To make matters worse, the bulldozer suddenly shuts down, and Dennis struggles to start it again. Meanwhile, Christine speeds toward the office to eliminate Lee. The car crashes through everything in its path, but the impact sends Arie flying through the windshield. Lee runs over to check if he's okay, but Arie suddenly grabs her. However, the wounds caused by the shattered glass are already too severe. In his final moments, he tries to reach out and touch his beloved car, but he dies in front of Christine without being able to do anything else. Lee runs away from the place, but Christine, in one last attempt at revenge, reverses to run her over. At the very last second, the girl manages to jump aside, and the car becomes stuck against a column. Dennis takes advantage of the moment. He manages to start the bulldozer and rams it straight into Christine. The impact is powerful, but the car still tries to escape. As the car moves toward Lee once again, Dennis uses the claw of the machine and pierces the car from behind. This time, Christine seems to lose power and becomes immobilized. Lee runs toward the bulldozer to join Dennis, but the car begins rebuilding itself again. Determined to end it once and for all, Dennis accelerates and completely crushes Christine with the bulldozer. The battle is finally over. The next day, Dennis and Lee meet with Detective Yonkins at a junkyard. There, they see Christine turned into a compacted block of metal. Everything seems to be over, until they hear a song very similar to the ones the car used to play on its radio. Fortunately, it's just a worker listening to music on his stereo. The three of them leave feeling relieved, without realizing that a small piece of Christine begins to move, proving that the demonic car is still alive.